Welcome back, horror fans, cinephiles, and giallo enthusiasts. This is Tanner Leeser, your host for all things giallo here on The King in Giallo. Well, here we are, the first review and GialliTally for the new year. If you haven't seen my overview for the film, go ahead and check that out for a spoiler-free rundown of the movie and its production, then come on back. We're going to jump right into the review and GialliTally, so let's waste no time. Here is $5 for an August Moon review. Spoilers ahead for those of you who haven't yet seen the film. You've been warned. My prediction for the movie's GialliTally score. So I am super familiar with this one, and I'm willing to wager that the tally score ends up around 450 to 500, maybe even more, but I don't want to push it too much. Well, let's begin the GialliTally and review portion of the video. Beginning, as always, with the pre-viewing cliches. The repeat offenders are 1 point for actor, 3 for writer, 3 for composer, and 5 for director. William Berger was in The Murder Clinic, 1 point. Edwidge Fenech was in The Seducers, aka Top Sensation, 1 point. Teodoro Cora was in 24 Hours of Terror, 1 point. Piero Umiliani composed for Orgasmo, 3 points. And Mario Bava directed The Girl Who Knew Too Much, The Telephone, and Blood and Black Lace, 15 points. Cliche points for the title, $5 for an August Moon, 5 points for a number in the title. First look, we have 25 points for the Italian director, and 15 points for this being in the golden age of giallo, 1970 to 1975. And would you look at that, it is plot o'clock. Pass me a jacket, please. We have a cold open, 5 points. We watch as a young woman strolls about this island setting. This is Isabel. Soon enough, it becomes nightfall and she approaches a petite mansion overlooking the ocean, the sounds of music drawing her in. Z is for zoom, 5 points. Immediately, let's add extra points for a zoom on eyes, another 5 points. E is for eyeballs, 5 points. We meet our main cast. I'll introduce them more as they make themselves more prevalent. This is George Stark, the owner of the place and the one who has invited the rest here. This is the professor. V is for voyeur, 5 points. Spiral staircase, 5 points. The movie is set in a manor or chateau, and extra points for it being a group of friends here for a long duration of the film, 10 points. Hell, F is for fashion, 5 points. Gratuitous 70s dancing, 2 points. This is Marie Cheney, and this is her husband, Nick Cheney. And this is former Vice President of the United States, Dick Cheney. George requests a rope so that they can play their next game, sacrificing a version to the god Krael. He jokes that he will kill her after much torture. This is Jacques, the houseboy. Don't get attached to him. K is for knife, 5 points. Everyone takes a knife, except for the professor, who doesn't seem amused in the slightest. Extra points for K is for knife for a reflection of light off the blade, another 5 points. Remember, this extra point can also be triggered by blood being seen on the blade. Well, you know, in due time, dear viewers. George begins to poke Marie with the knife, terrifying her, but her husband and everybody else gathers around, not to help, but to watch. They all seem very intrigued by this S&M type game. The lights are turned out. George leaves the room, inviting anyone to do whatever they please to the poor woman. We hear Marie groan as if she has been hurt. George returns in full regalia with a mask and flames. The lights burst back on, a scream is heard, and Marie seems to be covered in marinara or ketchup. A bloody knife sticking out from beneath her breast. Nobody will admit guilt. Nick admits, however, it was his knife, but that someone took it from him in the darkness. Waste no time, it was a prank. Cut to Marie and the houseboy Jacques on a boat, cruising. Some sailors and their yacht are departing, meaning the group of friends will truly be stranded now. I can add this later, but now seems good enough. I is for infidelity, 5 points. After some back and forth, the scene ends. The wives begin speculating why George has sent the crew away. What if something happens? Art featured, 5 points. The woman in the middle here is Trudy, the wife of the professor. The woman on the left is Peggy, the wife of Jack, and the one painting is Jill, the lady of the household and wife of George. Isabel arrives, and we get the briefest mention of who she is and why she is here.
Girare per l'isola da sola? No, e penso che mio padre ritorni presto insieme a mia madre. Può darsi anche domani. Eh sì, È già tanto che l'hanno operata.
That's it. That's literally it. Seems like she's supposed to be much younger than the actress actually is, but whatever. We've got the A-plot to set up. The three men are trying to buy off the professor's newest invention, an industrial resin which will revolutionize the industry and make whoever owns it even richer, for they will be able to sell it to factories all over the world. They offer him $1 million. They offer him $1 million from each of them, but he's not selling. He mentions that despite years of work, his friend died during the research process and he can't simply part with it. Exposition dumping, 2 points. This is Jack. He offers his wife, if that will sweeten the deal, which offends the professor. He wants to leave and asks why the hell George had sent the yacht away, to which he says that a storm is brewing and they don't have a sufficient harbor to safekeep the ship. Later we see George trying once again to get Gary, the professor, to sell. His wife can't assuage him any more than George can. She defends his decision to not sell. George leaves Gary with a warning to not do anything rash. Once alone, Gary takes out some papers and burns them. Jill and Trudy are talking privately outside, Jill lamenting her decision to marry despite the two of the women clearly loving each other. Queer characters, lesbians, 5 points. Jill promises that despite being married, her husband could never take her away from Trudy. Drama. They spy Marie heading out to see Jacques, the houseboy, once again. Marie hops onto the boat and goes inside, but it is all dark. She continues to call out to Jacques with no response. She turns the lights on and finds a knife in Jacques. Extra points for Z is for a zoom on a dead body, and a zoom on a knife. Another 10 points total here. She hilariously runs away along the beach with an even funnier cut to Isabel watching her. I'd like to point out how this moment of Edwidge Fenwick running among the foliage is setting up the same shot years later in Bay of Blood. Pretty cool. Cut to this great shot of the three industrialists lounging in defeat. Cut back to Marie. She seems to have gotten over the shock and grief. But why didn't she get help or tell anyone? Like, seriously, what the fuck? Marie is with her husband now, joking that he had called her a dirty whore for sleeping with the help, so she showered so she'll be a clean whore now, and we get the briefest of a tit slip. So, N is for nudity, 5 points. Nick mentions that he doesn't care that she slept with the houseboy, but that she's not acting in a way which could better serve his intentions, namely, sleeping with the professor or with George. A scream is heard from without. The group has discovered Jacques' dead body washed ashore. They all suspiciously look at each other, again, calling back to another Bava film, this time being Blood and Black Lace. They mention that they shouldn't move or touch the body, thus contaminating the crime scene, but also that if they do not move the body off of the shore, then the crabs will pick the corpse clean and the police will have no evidence whatsoever. Animals featured, crabs, 2 points. T is for telephone, 5 points. The professor tries to reach somebody, but it is no good. Gary accuses George of tampering with the phone so the police will not get involved, then he threatens to leave on a motorboat. The two run out onto the beach, but the motorboat, you know, the boat where Jacques was found dead, is no longer at the launch. The two endeavor to look for it, being spied upon by Isabel. Want to see something cool? Look at this. A ghost! Nah, that's a reflection on a glass mat painting. Cut to Jacques, wrapped in plastic, being placed in the deep freezer. Jill is taking the tragedy very difficult. J is for J and B, extra for it being drunk, 10 points. The others go. George slaps his wife once, twice, thrice, then goes. Typical 1970s Italian misogyny. Woman is slapped, 5 points.
Lo so che sei capace di tutto, di tutto!
Idiota! Zitta e basta!
I'll also add Y is for yelling, extra points for a hysterical woman yelling, 10 points total. As the camera pans away, we see this shawl, I think that's what that is, being nabbed. Cut to Trudy and Gary talking things over, when they are interrupted by a knock at the door, which prompts Trudy to leave the room. In walks Nick. He decides to deal with the professor one-on-one. He offers him a check for $1 million and says there's 5 more where that came from, but Gary says he's not dealing. Nick tells him to think it over, and that the account number to cash the check is 22333. Gary immediately goes to return the check to Nick, but Nick tells him to hold on to it. After Nick goes out, Gary leaves the check on the bed, nestled on some lingerie. The next scene, we follow Isabel as she has stolen the shawl and runs on the beach to hide it. She is spied upon by Nick, who goes to follow her. He finds the stowed shawl, then he catches up with her. He confronts Isabel, scaring her. Q is for questions. 5 points. The professor shows up before things can get worse. Nick releases Isabel, then leaves. Isabel and the professor talk briefly. He explains what his invention is, and she posits to him what he would do with $1 million. She says 1 million is actually not that much, that after some spending, it would all be gone. Then what would he do? To which he says, make another formula. He leaves her on the beach, and she begins drawing $signs in the wet sand just as they get washed away. Dare we say it? Symbolism. Trudy is taking a walk and sees Jill and George having a moment. The two women lock eyes. Characters necking. 5 points. Trudy disappears. She then is sitting overlooking the ocean as a very drunk Nick approaches her. He lightly caresses and feels her up while discussing how the two of them would make such a formidable power couple. Typical 1970s Italian misogyny. Woman is molested, groped, or sexually assaulted. 7 points. She boldly rejects his advances and leaves him where he stands. Cut to Gary telling George that things are ludicrous and that they all must get off the island. He adds that he cares not for the $6 million offered to him by Nick. Nick tells George that the professor ended up accepting their private deal, which surprises George, but when Gary says that he had left the check behind, Nick says that he curiously did not find said check. Gary goes to get to the bottom of things and finds Marie in bed wearing the same brassiere which he had set the check upon. She denies knowing about it, but he can check her if he wants to, saying he's bound to find something he likes. He exits. Jack and Peggy are out on the beach. The dialogue is very brief. We learn they're still trapped and that Peggy is afraid. Nothing new, essentially. Gary in bed thinking, Marie in bed thinking. Jack is overheard by Isabel telling Peggy how he must get his hands on that formula at any cost. Gary then gets out of bed. George and Nick are talking, with George low-key threatening Nick to join forces with him in obtaining the formula, but Nick walks out. Jill is out for a stroll, finds Trudy, and the two carry on talking. Gary is walking along the shoreline. Back to the women, Jill is afraid of whoever killed Jacques, but Trudy says to not think about it. Back to Gary, he sits. Back to the gals, Trudy wants to show Jill a beautiful spot. I bet. Back to Gary, a rifle racks into focus. Who is the gunman? Isabel. Bang! Hearing the gunshot, the women go to investigate. They find the professor motionless on the ground. They go to tell the others. Once gone, Isabel comes out of hiding to remove the body. Evidence, a body, is seen being hidden. 5 points. The others are at the scene of the murder, but the body is missing. George asks Trudy if maybe she was mistaken. I think this qualifies. Typical 1970s Italian misogyny. Woman is gaslit. 4 points. Nick believes her and points out that whoever did this was in a hurry because they didn't have time to cover up their tracks and that they must have hurried back to the house so that they could be present at this moment. They all go back to the house. The three men accuse Trudy, not necessarily of the murder, but predominantly of knowing where the secret formula is. She denies having the $1 million check and that whoever called her husband out of the house must be the killer. They ask about her meeting with Jill, to which she says is none of their business. Nick accuses her again and goes to slap her, but she counters him and tosses him to the ground. A woman outmuscles a man. 15 points. You go, girl. Cut to Peggy and Jack in bed. Cigarette pass. Peggy goes outside for a moment. Now, keep this sequence of events in mind. Jack speaks to Peggy, who doesn't answer, and when he goes outside, he finds her with a bullet hole in her head. Peggy is placed in cold storage now. Jack accuses George, but without any evidence, he leaves. Jack must have up and
RUNNOFT.
Because the others begin to look for him outside. Isabel hasn't seen him either.
Liar! Tell us what you know, you goddamn liar!
They find Jack, and for a moment they fear he's dead too, merely asleep. They ask where Marie is now, who was just out with them moments ago. Marie is found dead, tied to a tree with a knife in her breast. Marie is placed in cold storage now. Cut to Trudy expressing to George that she wants to leave. Then she accuses him of the murders. He leaves. George finds Nick searching through the professor's room for the formula. The two fight. Eventually, a table is knocked over, spilling tens of balls or orbs or whatever onto the floor, which roll down the stairs and into the bathroom, revealing Jill dead. She is in the tub with blood emanating from her wrists. Bathroom murder scene. Maybe not technically a murder, but fuck it. 7 points. On the mirror is written, "Forgive me, I can't go on." Mirror is used beyond its natural purpose. 2 points. Jill is placed in cold storage now. As Jack and George play chess, Trudy enters, turns off the music, and begins recording herself to document the events that have transpired. Audio recording device, 5 points. She mentions the obvious ties between George and Jack, the latter of whom is an associate to the former who helped arrange this gathering. Nick must also be a partner in business, she says. Nick shuts off the recorder. George suggests that they all sleep in the same room so the killer won't be able to sneak about to kill one of them off. Nick storms out, proclaiming that the killer would just murder them all. Trudy resumes the recording, saying that Nick has gone out. They ask her to cut it out, saying it must be an obsession. Don't hate me, I can do this later, but I'm just gonna do it now. O is for obsession, 5 points. Jack invites them to have a drink he's been shaking up. They all agree and drink. Through a rack of the focus out, then back in, we see that they have all passed out. Nicely done, Bava. The yacht is outside and the sailors are back, and this is the first time I have noticed it, but I'm pretty sure that boat is a matte painting. Well done. The house is empty. But where did they go? They performed the worst search ever of the entire premises to find the others and seem to give up before really even beginning. Then they all leave. We see the recording device has still been recording. They didn't even find the bodies in cold storage. They really didn't look. Cut to the others back in their original positions. Trudy awakens, then wakes the others. They were drugged. The dosage must have been intended to kill them, but wasn't strong enough. They ponder who could have done it, realizing Nick was the only one not knocked out. But they find Nick in cold storage now. While sitting around waiting for the yacht, George notices the recorder is still on. He resets the tape, rewinds it, and perfectly plays it when the crew had arrived and was searching for them. They discover the killer must indeed be one of them and that they had pretended to be unconscious with the others, but had hidden them all when the crew showed up, then returned them all. Jack leaves the room, giving George the chance to bribe Trudy with a $1 million check to assist him. George then goes to the window and notices something reflecting outside. It's just one of the film's crewmen holding a mirror, but he also finds the boat they were looking for earlier. George attempts to clear the foliage and start the boat, but he's only successful with half of his endeavor. Now, since the boat won't start, I'll give faulty car or car trouble, but amend this to include a vehicle in general that won't start. 2 points. He returns to the house only to have a gun brandished at him. The killer is Jack. He admits to destroying the launch, the telephone, and killing Nick when they were all incapacitated. He had placed drugs in their drinks. Add both illicit drugs, extra for being taken against another's will, 10 points, and character takes sedatives, extra for being with alcohol, 10 points again. Also add A is for alibi, for Jack claiming he was also knocked out, 5 points, and L is for lies, extra points for the killer lying about their alibi, 10 points. Let's also do hidden identity of the killer until the final moments, 5 points. Jack mentions that he plans to submerge the bodies beneath the launch. George pleads that he thought Jack agreed to not kill him, to which Jack says that his original plan was to frame George. After all, he believes George killed the professor. As this all occurs, Trudy spies on the two of them. Jack admits to killing all the others, including Peggy, but wait, remember? How the hell could he have done that? Watch out, everybody. Don't fall into that plot hole. Jack says Peggy knew too much. He can't afford to leave witnesses. He then, bang, shoots George. Bang, bang, bang. Betrayal by the killer, 5 points. Also, Isabel witnesses this murder, so W is for witness, 5 points. And add extra points for V is for voyeur, for her now becoming a witness, add another 5 points. You think George is still alive? I mean, he is still breathing. Isabel watches Jack go upstairs, calling out Trudy as he walks up. Jack searches for Trudy. I'm gonna give first-person POV of the killer 5 points. He finds Trudy, who accuses him of killing her husband, and surprise, surprise, Trudy was working with Jack also. Everybody was working with everybody else and double-crossed each other. Fuck, man. Trudy says he won't kill her though, because she knows where the formula is. They strike up a deal, and Trudy goes to get the formula. The formula was hidden upon microfilm in a ring which was in Jill's brassiere. What the fuck? Isabel continues to spy on everyone. Jack gives Trudy a check, and she gives him the formula. She then clutches a golden pistol of her own and bang! Shoots Jack, but he bang! Shoots her back 4 times actually. Bang! 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 The killer is killed by someone, 10 points. The killer dies accidentally via gunshot, 5 points. Isabel comes out of hiding and steals the check and the formula, but she gets the formula and Jack dies. Isabel closes the door and leaves Jack and Trudy in cold storage now. Cut to Isabel visiting Gary behind bars, condemned for the murder of his science partner. Apparently, the fake bullet Isabel shot Gary with was sodium pentothal, and this caused him to confess to his partner's murder. S is for secrets, 5 points, and someone faked their death, 5 points. I was considering adding impossible scientific method for how he confessed, but sodium pentothal was actually used in the last century for this purpose. So, fuck it. She apologizes, telling him that her father used to knock out animals with sodium pentothal, and she never knew it would cause him to confess. Her plan was to save the professor from being murdered by the others. So, she is basically obsessed with him, so there. She says she needs his help because she is now broke after spending $2 million, both Jack and George's checks, but she can't cash Nick's check. He tells her the combination. Remember it? 22333. She thanks him and leaves. Oh yeah, his name is Fritz apparently in the Italian version. My bad for calling him Gary and not going back to fix the script to reflect that. She exits, gets picked up in a Rolls Royce, and orders to be taken to Switzerland. G is for gloves. Now, Jacques had white gloves, which I didn't count earlier, but here you can see black gloves, so extra points, 10 points. The movie scores some final points here for this random sequence of a flashback to Isabel on the swing from earlier. I don't know why. Fine. I think it is. The credits roll as the car cruises along the coast, and that's $5 for an August moon. I adore this movie, although I recognize that this may be a controversial opinion. I think the plot is engaging enough to keep me interested, the red herrings are abundant, and the fact that literally anyone could be the mastermind is certainly top-notch. Bava doesn't really have any bad films. There are some that I am not wowed by, but none I have ever seen and said, this is crap. The winner of this film is Piero Umiliani, who creates one of the greatest giallo scores. The music isn't even spooky or anything similar to the other giallo flicks, who have some of my other favorite soundtracks, but damn, I think it carries this movie to being something more worthwhile. So many of the music found herein could have easily been stolen by Tarantino, and I am so glad that he hasn't touched any of it. So perhaps I can use some for my own movie. Lastly, I'll say that this movie has its moments that make it comedic. It's not a comedy giallo though, not like The Editor is, but damn, the recurring sequence of people getting set in the freezer to the same bit of music is comedic gold in my opinion. Let's segue to the GialliTally cliches for this movie. Post-giallo viewing cliches. The reason for the killings, greed and gain, 5 points. The reason for the investigation, we do not have one. No points. Bonus points. The style bonus. This movie is very stylish. It's perhaps easier to name the things missing, which are mostly the stereotypical colored gelled lights and some other zany effects. We have zooms and crash zooms, focus racks in and out, camera whips, mirror shots, at least one POV, and I think this is slow motion here. Am I wrong? I will still give this film 21 points out of a possible 25 for its style bonus. Soundtrack. Oh, indeed, 15 points. Bad effects? I'm gonna say no. Bava does a good job of hiding moments in the film which he doesn't have the budget to pull off, and I personally think these effects aren't that bad. Not like a fake body or some shit. The worst part are the gunshot wounds, and they're fine. No bad effect, no points. Final look, extra points. The Deadpool tallying how many kills and deaths are featured in the film. I break it down as thus: 10 points per kill or death scene for the main Deadpool, plus any stylistic kill multipliers, which we didn't add yet, plus the knife kill bonus. We have Jacques stabbed, and in medical terms, this is considered an impalement injury, so impaled, 6, plus a knife, 5, for a total of 21 points. Peggy, gunshot, 10 points. Marie, stabbed, so impaled and knife, 21 points again. Jill, Selbstmord, 10 points. Nick, unknown, 10 points. George, gunshots, 10 points. Trudy, gunshots, 10 points. Jack, gunshot, 10 points. Extended Deadpool for those other deaths mentioned but not seen, I'll give 3 points for each. The Professor's science partner, 3 points. Red herrings for the total number of legitimate suspects in the film. 5 points per legit suspect are awarded. I'll be frank, it's basically everybody. George, Nick, Jack, Isabel, Trudy, Peggy, Marie, Jill, and the Professor. 45 points in total. Flashback sequences, 5 points each. 1. 5 points total. Nudity, I award 5 points for ass, 7 for breasts, and 10 for genitalia. Breasts, peekaboo, 7 points total. Ladies and gentlemen, for $5 for An August Moon, I awarded the film an A to Z score of 17 out of 26. With the bonus points for these, we have a modified score total of 130 points. And for the full GialliTally score, I award $5 for An August Moon, a GialliTally score of 547 points, compared to Perversion Story with 571 points, and The Bird with the Crystal Plumage in second with 556 points. $5 for An August Moon is in third with 547 points. I predicted that the movie would end up getting around 450 to 500 points, so I'm kind of surprised, but I kind of had a feeling that it would break over 500. I just didn't know how much. But like I've said before, these points don't mean a movie is better or worse. Don't forget the audience submissions. For these film reviews, I will be accepting memes you, the viewer, submit to me, created from still shots or GIFs from the movie with some accompanying text. The best ones I will feature in the follow-up video, whilst giving you a shout out for your submission. I will also separately be accepting the best still shots from the film, inspired by the idea of every frame being a painting. This portion will be called Giallo Shots. Submit any of your memes or best film frames for $5 for An August Moon to me at icaruscrispy@gmail.com. Please leave a comment in any of my videos letting me know you've sent a submission. Please like this video, share it with your friends if they are horror fans or cinephiles, subscribe to The King in Giallo if you haven't yet, and if you have any questions, thoughts, curiosities, or concerns, leave those below in the comments section and I will get back to you. Give The King in Giallo a follow on Instagram and a like on Facebook. Next time on The King in Giallo will be the overview for the first Giallo film by Luciano Ercoli, Forbidden Photos of a Lady Above Suspicion, released in 1970, and written by Ernesto Gastaldi, with music by Ennio Morricone. Thank you all very much for your continued support. This is Tanner Leeser for The King in Giallo, and if nothing else, I'll see you next time.
Silenzio! Silenzio! Ecco il fuoco purificatore che avanza verso di voi. Peccatrice! Preparati! Ecco.
Chi è stato? Questa volta non servirà spruzzare il senso.
Il primo tentativo di cameriere sul gelato.